sound. Hey everybody, this is Anne and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host. And we are out a disembodied voice Justin. Technically his spirit is hovering, but he has no vocals. So someone has put a big band-aid over his mouth or something. I have no idea. But Justin's not talking today. He's not in Discord. So he is watching. He is monitoring us. He is Big Brother today, apparently. But yeah, hey everybody. There he is. There's Reaper Miniatures. So he is here with us in spirit, but he is not vocally here. Hey, Smallish, thank you for the resub. 5 months. Awesome. That's super. I am gonna try to see how the back is today, guys. It's still, this may be my new normal. It's just a bit dicey. It's prone to overwork, so I'm gonna try not to overwork it. And if I have to switch chairs in the middle, then I have to switch chairs. We're all out of the disembodied voice Justin today. Would you like to substitute that with a silent typist Justin instead? Yes, that's perfect. And exactly that voice. Iffy Paints, thank you. 18 months. Yes, Justin triple masking Bryce. You guys are funny. You guys are funny. All right, so we're on Catty Cat. I'm just going to jump right in because I don't know. If my back acts up, we'll probably only do an hour. But if we're good, then we can keep painting. So that is my... what we're doing. We're gonna right away. We're gonna like try to mix up the NMM colors again. And if this fails again, guys, like on Friday, the stream went out because my internet provider decided to do routine maintenance without informing us. So I looked out my window. Those of you who are on my Discord know this and got many funnies out of it. But essentially, I'm like, what happened to my internet? And I'm rushing around trying to do things. Then I look out my window and there's a telecom guy with a table with the internet guts spewed out on it. I'm like, oh, that's what happened to my internet. Hello, Bob and Julie. Yeah, Jenna, it was literally they had decided to do a routine maintenance and they hadn't told the office, so the office hadn't told us. So, like, I look out my window and the telecom guy is there. So it's like, aw. Yeah. So it wasn't broken. It was just, they decided to break it at a free... And who does this? Why? I mean, I guess if you have to pay extra for your dudes to work on the weekend, I mean, but everybody's doing telecom meetings and stuff, right? Everybody's doing... I guess they figured, well, these people can just use their phones or something like that. I don't know. But it was just kind of, it was kind of funny. I was sad though. And so anyway, if I mix up these NMM colors today and once again, something terrible happens, I'm just going to take it that the NMM is cursed and we just won't do it. Yo, Numbat, I'm sorry you can't sleep. I hate it when that happens. My mom suffers from that and I'm really hoping that I'm not heading for it later in life like she did. She wakes up in the middle of the night and can't sleep. Hello. Yeah, I'm gonna be careful with my back today. We're gonna just try to keep it nice and straight and supported. And like I said, I have my other chair just in case. So this is what happens to my brushes as I work with them. This is kind of funny. So look at this. Like, you can see this one's much fatter and does the sudden taper. But after months of abuse, the other one just slowly slims down. This is what happens to my brushes over time. Like, they just slim down. They don't lose their awesome tip. I can still do everything with them. They just slim down. Possibly because I rinse them so often. Good morning. Routine maintenance, yeah. Exactly. All right, cool. So let's see. I'm going to pop that over there. And I need some pure white. And I was thinking that I was going to use gray liner for the shadows here, but what we really should do... What's up with you, Kerniko? I missed it. I missed a Kerniko thing. Oh, isolating. Yuck. Yeah, good luck. I hope you're fine, Kreniko. Anyway, as I was saying, gray liner is great if you're doing generic NMM, but if you want your NMM to look more realistic, then you probably want to use some colors in it that echo the surroundings. So the question really is she just in a dungeon? Because if she's in a dungeon or a city, then the colors around her are going to be gray, and we should just go with that. Oh, great. I don't know if the hairs are thinning. I think I'm just slowly losing hairs, green users, because this happens to all my brushes. So I don't think the hairs I don't know if the hairs themselves are actually thinning. That would be weird. Oh, maybe. But they do seem to become very, very thin over time as I abuse them. So it's weird. It's like me and like I think one other person said that they have the same thing with that's how their brushes wear. They don't ever lose the tip or anything. They just like get thinner and thinner until they fade away. There we go. Hello, Captain Pugwash. All right, so we're going to get some blue from the sky. We're going to say not a dungeon, perhaps a city, because I want that blue in there because she's got the blue accents now on her hilt and on her eyes. So I want a little touch more blue. Not a lot, but I want a little bit of reflection in these blades. So that's what I'm going to do. We'll just say that she's in a city, in which case she could have colors of anything around her. So I might just use a brown liner for genericness sake. I've talked about this before, but the danger in using all gray, black, and white in your NMM is that it looks like a black and white illustration. It doesn't look like quite right, because metal should be... your eyes are used to looking at metal and seeing it reflect all sorts of colors, even if it's subtle. So when you do that, it just looks like a pencil drawing if you only use gray, black, and white. And I did that for years, and my NMM was okay for the times, right? But these days people are more cognizant about it. So when you're learning, feel free to use gray, black, and white. Or gray, in my case, gray, like cloudy gray liner and white. But here we're going to use brown liner just to suggest a little bit more of an organic shadow. And we're also going to be mixing the blue in, and that'll help. Yeah, cold weather. We were foggy this morning, and the South Bay doesn't often fog. It's not San Francisco. David, when he lived in San Francisco, always got fog. Let's get our water in here. Just going to start out. Since I put a base coat down, I can thin all of my colors. So I'm going to start at a 2:1. Actually, I'm going to start at a 1:1 for the white. So 4 drops of white, 4 drops of water. I'm going to use my mixing brush. It's cyan blue, Coves. It's the same blue. I've lately come up with a new recipe for Sky Earth NMM, but this blue is cyan, that is cyan, so I am using cyan mixed with the gray on this. Yeah, we had fog this morning and it was weird. I grew up in southeast Wisconsin, and there's all sorts of fog in there. So I'm used to fog from when I was growing up, but you don't see it here apparently in the South Bay very often. So I'm going to mix some gray into the cyan, just a little. I want the cyan to be fairly strong in at least one place on this so that it can be a color accent. What about the book, Captain? And what book? Oh, yeah, that can be a pain in the butt. I had a friend who had a litter of puppies during that time, and they were young enough that they couldn't self-regulate their temperature. And she was in Virginia, and it was like freezing and their furnace went out, but they had a huge stove in the basement, so they essentially all moved into the basement. So if you can imagine being with a litter of like newborn puppies, trying to all be crammed in with you and your husband and all the stuff you need into a basement. It was a semi-finished basement, but still. Way too cold for fog. Yeah, that is. All right, so we're going to mix up all our colors. And like I said, I thinned my white down a lot. 1:1. 1:1 paint to water. And pure white, Reaper Pure White, can handle that. Some other brands may not. But Reaper Pure White at 1:1 is still really strong. Twisted Homa. Well, I don't know. I like to think of it not as like, offering advice so much as, like actually giving a darn. So I'm going to put a dark line straight down the backside. We already shaded the back part of each blade so that it's darker than the front. I'm going to start with this line down here. I may fudge it out. I may fuzz it out. Right now it's just going to serve as a delineation because you always have a shadow opposite your brightest highlight. And the other thing we always want to do is we want to take our pure white, and on a sword that has a beveled blade like this, which all swords technically should, unless they're monofilament swords. Thank you, Shadowrun. Then we want to put a white. And yeah, I could have left my white a little stronger for this. As it is, I'm probably going to have to go over that line twice. Yeah, I agree, Stingray. It's just being compassionate. When you tell people to take care. I kind of think, I don't know, as I get older, it seems like as we get older, we get both an additional like helping of just don't give a darn, and also a helping of actually caring about other people. At least if we're, fairly compassionate beings. Wiped out a little bit of my shadow there. Tried to use the side brushing thing, but the blade here is just the way the cast hand, and this happens with bones, where it's a little weebly wobbly, so it's not a really sharp edge here. So at that point you may just need to paint over it and just touch it up if you go over a bit. But you do want that bright line down the middle. Oh, interesting. Alrighty, so now I will use the side of my brush, and I will do the same thing, putting a white line down here. This is very simplified NMM, but it's just kind of setting some parameters for you. No matter how weird or otherwise wonky you want to make your NMM, you do want your edges where the light is falling to be light, pure white if you can. Metal is the one thing that is always highlighted up to pure white. Metal and wet objects, technically, if you're doing a faux wet and you're not using gloss. But metal will always reflect the brightest light because it's shiny. True, and you're on YouTube. All right, so let's see here. So now, let's get the other one. I can maybe use my side of my brush for this. You want very little paint on your brush if you're going to use the side of it to hit these lines like this. Because if you have too much paint on your brush, it's just going to flow right off the edge and onto everywhere. But I can go over that line again and again, and it'll be nice and sharp. Yeah, -40, way too cold. I grew up, there was one day when I was in college in Madison, Wisconsin, where it was -40. And later they had postcards of that day because the steam, there were factories that were letting steam vent, and it was freezing and essentially hovering in the air like this giant bank of icing. And somebody took pictures of it, and it became a Madison postcard. It was it's kind of crazy. All right, so now we want to put in some bands of light and shadow. We want our bands to be lighter on the light side and darker on the dark side. So on the light side also, since we are facing the sky, we're going to introduce some blue. Industrial snow, yeah. Yeah, we are a worldwide extended family. Yeah. And I think there are many communities, I think that Discord and Twitch especially encourage that sort of community. Like, I'm into the Overwatch computer game and into their esports league. And when I was on the Discords of a couple of like the players and personalities that I enjoyed, like it was all over the world, like everybody. We had people from Japan and Korea and Europe and Africa and Australia, just like we have here. So I think that, it's like the interwebs, much as sometimes it makes trouble for us, it also sometimes creates an opportunity for us all to pull together and talk about how our different countries are weirder. Morning, Davidware. So I'm going to put just a little bit of blue. We're going to block it in. It might not stay that bright, But what I'm trying to get here is I'm trying to get the play between blue eyes, blue swords, blue dagger, and kind of get that bouncing back and forth so that we don't just have that blue in two places on the model. I want to repeat it. Ideally, when you repeat a color, an accent color, you're kind of pulling the eye around the figure. You don't have to pull it all the way down to the feet, but you want to pull it around the important part of the figure. And here, that's her readiness pose. So this whole upper torso with the action of the arms, that's the most important part of the figure. So... all right, so let's see here. I need to grab my shadow, and I don't want it to be as dark as it will be elsewhere, so I'm going to grab some cloudy gray and mix some brown liner into it, create a slightly lighter dark. So you want to put bands of light and shadow on both sides, both edges, like both dark side and light side of your sword. You just don't want to go as dark when you're on your light side, and you don't want to go as light when you're on your dark side, if that makes sense. So the range you're working with will be different. I'm going to put a dark one here and a dark one there. And it may not be quite as dark. I may have to actually strengthen my brown liner. I do want some darkness. I want some depth. You need to have some contrast here. Remember, NMM likes contrast. And you'll get some from the back of the blade being darker, but you do want a little bit of kind of variation. And when you put a dark shadow on the front part of a steel NMM or silver NMM object, what you're essentially suggesting is that there's something in the immediate environment that's blocking the light. So a person approaching, or a building or a post or something, anything, a tree, depending on the color you make it, right? So you can introduce little subtle colors into this. Although if it's just a shadow, like if say she's in an alley and the person approaching her is backlit, that's exactly what you'd get, is just that dark shadow. So that kind of stuff. Hello, Kwankura, or however you pronounce your name. I reserve the right to kind of, mess up names from time to time. And if I do put a light in here, I don't want to go as light as it is in my brightest. My brightest probably needs to be here, because we will have kind of what we're looking at here is kind of a horizon line. So if the upper part of the blade, we get a shadow from the hilt up here, but the upper part of the blade is blue sky, then it's going to fade down to white and go down to dark. Remember, you need to put that light next to that dark for NMM somewhere, somehow. And on a sword, it can be very challenging to blend those in. And I probably want to maybe minimize my dark a little bit, but I mostly, at this point, I'm just mapping out the bands of light and shadow. And I may paint some gray over this dark shadow just to make it a little bit more subtle, especially near the bottom where I'm trying to blend it in. Because you do want these things to blend together. Some painters will wait and use an airbrush to glaze, or do an entire glaze over the whole thing, and then do the white lines that I did around the edges. You should probably use that as maybe your last step. I don't mind doing it early, but I may need to touch them up as I go and do more of this stuff. But you can see how strong that white is. Like, even though I thinned it 1:1, paint to water, I do need a little bit of a fade here, though. Like, if it was Sky Earth, I could get away with a sharp definition. And should. Sky Earth is when you're showing the horizon line, is when you're doing a super mirror shiny object. And I mean really mirror. I mean like reflecting everything very minutely. So I'm going to phase out the cyan a little bit more. I can almost bring it back in a little bit. This is where you just go back and forth and adjust. So it's never, with NMM and me, it's never a case of doing it and just leaving it. It's always a case of futzing with it until it looks the way I feel it ought to look. And possibly that's because I often don't have like light, and the action of light is something I had to learn. I'm very good at color out the gate. I've always been good at color, but light is a different beast. So for me, futzing and playing with stuff is part of the process of trying to get something to look right. and I'm not in a hurry. And I am going to switch chairs, actually. Just so we know, it's about half an hour in. I'm going to switch to my bigger chair. We'll leave Kitty there. You can look at her pretty blade. And then when I come back, maybe I'll show you guys my Sky Earth thing that I was working on over the weekend. I did decide to put Sky Earth on something. And my patrons got to see it on the Discord. Let me grab my bigger, taller chair. We're just going to switch it up. What I've learned in my struggles with my back is that switching it up is important. My back does not like it when it sits or stands in one position for a long time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to mix it up out the gate. And of course, you know, stretching break. If we're standing up, we may as well do a stretch break. Well, Wapple is, as I always bring up Shadow Raven, James Wapple has decades of experience as a 2D painter. And I mean by canvas 2D. And so it should not be a surprise that he can pull off Sky Earth. Like, you should never, what I'm trying to say is never measure yourself against that. Like, never say, oh, it's magic. It's not magic, it's just experience. Experience and study and experimentation. Doing my little stretches. Hope you all will join me. Do some stretch. Do some stretch. Get your body out of the box, out of the computer box. Stay off there. But for me, I don't have an instinctual grasp of Sky Earth. I don't think anybody necessarily does. It's just experience and learning. Like, David is probably the person I know who's best at light. And, like, he'd still have to think and tune it, right? So, okay. So there. That's the start of Sky Earth on the shoulder pad. So, and that's after like a lot of kind of fudging and blocking, and a lot of it's going to change. A lot of it is wrong right now, but it's like getting there. So, but that's, I mean, I futzed with that sucker for a couple hours, you know, just, and I'm going to have to futz with it more because it's just not, it's not like perfect Sky Earth, you know, and Sky Earth needs to nail it. Like, for Sky Earth to look correct, it needs to, you need to get it right. So if I continued to do Sky Earth on stuff, then I would get a better and better grasp of it. Let's see, make sure we're in camera. Yep, good. All right, I'm going to start lightening up this area again. Going to lighten the sword edge right in that specific area where the light comes in. So yeah, the lion shoulder pad, I'm taking work in progress pictures as I go, and I'll probably do a PDF of it for my Patreon. I may make it a special offer. For joining, which still means that everybody who is in a level still gets it, but I haven't done a special offer for a while. Alright, so lightening up this area, because this is the bright, this is where the light is really gonna hit off of the blade. But yeah, but it takes a while. I mean, you have to pretty much, when you're doing something, and given that lion shoulder pad is like the most, if I had to choose the most complicated thing to do Sky Earth on in the universe, that's it. But too much blue, dang it. But it makes you think about every little surface and how the light is acting. Sky Earth isn't as hard as you think, but it does mean you have to look at every little surface. And you have to build an understanding of where it's going to be reflecting the sky and where it's going to be reflecting the light. I've been looking at a lot of Kirill's stuff, because Kirill does fantastic, very bright Sky Earth. Sometimes. Kirill Knave, my favorite painter. Yeah, sometimes you just have to. Like, why bother? I mean, I know the basic principles of Sky Earth, so why bother not with something amazing? Why bother doing it just on normal things? Let's just do a lion. Let's do a lion in Sky Earth Enemy. Why not? Plus, it just begged for it. Like, since I bought that model, I've known that was what I was going to do to it. It's seldom that a model speaks that loudly. But I just saw a kind of an image in my head of doing the metal that way and was like, yep, I think I'm going to do that. And I like to push myself. I mean, let's face it. There's a reason that I'm a good miniature painter, and it's because I like to stretch. I like to, not physically, well, physically stretch too, but I like to kind of stretch my abilities, right? I like to learn new things. I like to tackle new stuff. That's how you get to be really good at something. You challenge yourself and you try to figure out stuff you don't know yet. So on that model, I'm working with two new things for me. I'm working with doing kind of a hyper-realistic face, and I'm working on the Sky Earth. And I mentioned this before, just a moment ago, Crowley. 5 minutes ago, when I switched chairs. Because this may be the new normal for my back, since I had that spasm 2.5 weeks ago. Almost 3 weeks ago. Like, it could just be that my back has taken just too much abuse, and that it's just going to be kind of... needs to be pampered a little bit from now on. Can't just abuse it anymore. Like, oh, and it has taken a lot of abuse. Like, I do not blame my back for kind of serving me up. Saying, hey, guess what? I'm here. And I'm not being quiet anymore. Yeah, save the back. I know, right? Oh, yeah, that's cool. You can be distracted by your small child. That's cool, Crowley. Thanks for checking. We'll probably do every half hour. I'm trying to keep good posture as I do this. Be aware of your posture. The first step to saving your back is to be aware of your posture when you're in the chair. Notice how straight my shoulders are. I'm trying to keep everything straight and focused. I can't help bending my neck down, but I can keep myself from slumping my entire spinal column. Having the head down is still going to irritate my lower back, which is why the stretches are necessary. And when you're younger, you can get away with a lot more. So there, we've got some nice bands. Now, these are a little bit too regular, so what I can do, and what I should do, is break them up a little and make them a little more irregular. So make this space bigger, this space more narrow. Kind of wiggle it. Like, you don't want just symmetrical alternating bands of light and shadow, because as we just discussed a second ago, where your light is interrupted by shadows is probably where there are things or objects or people in the terrain who are interrupting the light. And so this could be a person approaching our rogue. That could be why she has, or a monster. That's why she's got her swords out. But that monster is not going to be the same, take up the same amount of space as the sky above and the wall of the alley and the, everything else. So if that's the case, we need to make these a little bit irregular. So interrupt your bands, make them a little bit more... Make sure you've got little spaces and wide spaces. So along with that as well, I'm going to widen this light down here. It may be picking up bounced light. So I'll widen this space. So pretty much treat every little band of light, shadow, and color as a different, as kind of break them out and make sure they're not all the same length. Yeah, small child uses distraction. It is super effective. Yes. Yeah, yesterday I really, really was good in my back, Inara. Like, all yesterday I tried really hard. I rested it. I gave it ice several times. I still did. You're never supposed to just not use it, because that's not good. You need to, like, rebuild strength. So I did do my exercises. I'm doing a very tiny amount of of yoga, and by tiny I mean like the super easy stretches, like I'm doing like child pose to stretch it out, and I'm doing cat cows. It seems to like cat cows to kind of stretch it out a little bit. When it's unhappy, I do the cat cow. And for those of you who don't know yoga, cat cow is like when you arch your back like the cat and then you let it sway but like the cow, but you have to keep your core firm when you do both. Easy exercise for pretty much anybody to do. And you raise your head when you're doing the cow, and you lower your head when you're doing the cat. So now that's kind of pretty. Isn't that kind of pretty? Don't you think? Yeah? So anyway, cat cows apparently are something my body likes, because when my back gets a little irritated, it's like, please do a cat cow now. So we've got a really dark shadow back behind this blade, which is fine. It's kind of reflecting off of whatever's behind her, which if that's a dark alley, that's cool. We can also go in here and just suggest some lighter areas. Take kind of your medium gray and break up you see what I mean, the black back of this blade is very, very dark. Yeah, and breathing. So you inhale when you do the cow, and you exhale when you do the cat. But yeah, I was a very good Anne. I did not paint, and I only played computer games for like 40 minutes. We have figured out that playing computer games is part of the problem. Even though I've set up my area to be as like friendly as possible, it's still, I can't play for very long. Not right now, anyway. We're trying, like I said, trying to strengthen it. So when you go back here, again, on this dark side of the blade, you still want some lights and shadows, but you're going to go more shadows, less lights. Yep, exactly. In fact, I'm going to get out and I'm going to do a cat cow right now. So I'm going to let you guys look at this super pretty blade for a second while I stretch my back. It's going to be that, like that, here and there. We're going to do stretchies. Anybody who wants to join me with the stretchies, I'm just going to focus it down here. Anybody who wants to join me with the stretchies can do so. So we're going to do a painting and yoga stream. That would be terrible. Oh, terrible. Yeah, it is. But I got myself in this boat, right? So my challenge is to make, is to strengthen, right? If I want to play computer games again, it's got to reset up my area, and I've got to strengthen. So, you got to work with it. You got no choice. It's your back, right? You really are not going to be able to just ignore it. A lot of people do, to their great peril. I'm going to turn this around and do this. Yay, okay, more, haha. See, I'm going up and down. Agent Marvel, this is a little bit more than basic. So here, let me move my camera so that I'm facing y'all, since I'm a little taller now. Yeah, I gotta keep the shoulders back, gotta keep the spine straight. And for me, I think it's just, yeah, the armor's cool. It's gonna probably get another layer, Steven, but thank you, or Steve. But yeah, Agent Marvel, NMM, I could do a much simpler example. This one is kind of what I want, why do I say modern European style, where you're doing the bands up and down. Old style, or with a blade held horizontally, it would be a little bit different, and also a little simpler. A vertical blade is actually the hardest, I think, to do. Agent Marvel, Graniko actual cat. Yeah, we'll see. I did tell Justin that this stream might be a little bit shorter if my back was very sad. But I'm just going to try to see how far we can go. And I'm going to be conscious of it, so I'm going to put a long bit of light in on that side. You still want that side to be darker. And I need to bring in my liner. But yeah, what I would do with Agent Marvel, since you're brand new to NMM, is definitely look up a simple NMM tutorial. The first thing you need to kind of figure out Yeah, I know, Reaper. I'm just like switching around, trying to figure out. This chair is definitely not working for me right now. So 1 second. It was working the other day, but apparently the back is like, no, we do not like this chair today. Sad back. Whoop. All right. Yeah, and that looks really good too, Steve. I mean, if that's what you want to do with your metal, do it. I mean, everything is optional, right? Like the only thing that I tended to gravitate toward NMM because I like to bring out sharp details on my models, and NMM is much better at that than Metallics is. So for me, NMM is fun and worth it. The one thing that I would say is don't avoid NMM just because you're scared of it. If you honestly don't like it, that's one thing. Perfect, no problem, go for it. You know, you can do almost everything with Metallics and it will look just fine. But you know, if you're curious about it, give it a try. But definitely look up a simple tutorial. You want a very simple tutorial because you have to start thinking, to do NMM well, you have to start thinking about light. And that's the hard part. Like, you know, relatively speaking, the blending of NMM, although difficult, is not the end-all problem. The thing about NMM is that if you're going to make it look right, you need to think about light. Yeah, if you really like metallic paint, go for it. Let me see here. I think I need... Just want to make sure I'm in focus here. Yeah, we're pretty good. Interesting, Twisted Oma. That's really interesting. Figure 8 belt through the shoulder, across the shoulders. Yeah, it would do it, wouldn't it? It would make you do it. So I need a little bit of a lighter. Where's my lighter gray? Trying to get the biggest challenge with steel NMM is trying to get that blend, that fade from pretty much near black to pretty much near white, and that is the hardest. But then you can see how this is turning out. Yeah, bionic backs. We all wish we had a bionic back until we do, probably. I'm going to make a dark shadow at the top here. Really dark. Much darker than it is on the other side. To still kind of figure out a point to the fact that this is the shadow side of the blade and not the light side. So this is maybe a little light. I can glaze my dark gray over it. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessary. You can do NMM without knowing blending. Like, I used to not think this, but since then I've turned around my thinking on this. I'm gonna glaze some gray over this to blend it in a bit. Clover, for the glaze, it's got to be like 1 to 2 paint to water, but for this, the white is at 1 to 1, and it's probably a little bit strong even. I could probably thin it more. When you want to blend with pure white, you want to go at least 2 to 1, or sorry, 1 to 2 paint to water. So twice as much water as paint. And this is only for Reaper Pure White, because Reaper Pure White is a beast. It's awesome. So if I wanted this to really blend smoothly, I just have to, essentially, if I thinned it more, I'd have to build up more layers. And I wanted to go a little faster today, so that's why I kept it only 1 to 1. The rest of my paints right now are at 2 to 1 paint to water. I had a base coat of gray down, so I could afford to... I'm going to also focus this a bit better here. There we go, much better. There we are. So pretty thin. These days, my basic mixes tend to be between 3 to 1 and 2 to 1 clover, so I work with very thin paint. I like it. Yeah, nice twist, Doma. Yeah, you don't want a stinky child. Bathing is important. All right, so I'm going to put just a little band of light here, maybe another little band of light here. Another important thing is you don't want these bands to necessarily line up with the stuff on this side. You want them to kind of be offset because, you know, whatever surface this part of the blade is angled toward, it's not the same as what it's angled toward the front. So here, if I've got an alley wall that is being reflected by this mostly, then I need to keep that in mind and make it irregular. So you don't have to like paint an alley wall in it. You don't want to do that because it's probably not, this is not a mirror. Swords are not chrome. They are typically brushed steel, so worked steel, but they're not like a mirror. Sky, Earth, and MM is where you are painting something to be as though it is a mirror. And the only place in fantasy that I feel that's really suitable is for magical armor, which is why I'm doing it on my bust that I showed a little bit ago. Because she definitely looks like that's magical armor. Or very well could be. So I brought in a little bit more of my line down the center here, so I got more of a gradient. I'm going to do another glaze to just kind of sink the shadows down a little bit on this part of the sword. Hey, Mivwen, thank you for the resub. I'm going to grab my cloudy gray, thin it down about 1 to 2 or 1 to 3, so it's really, really watery and thin. Glaze level. The more white is in the color you want to glaze with, the more you will have to thin it. Hey, Cool Pack. The back is operating so far. We may end shortly after the hour mark. I am slowly building the back up, and I don't want to annoy it. So right now it is okay, but I don't want to push it. Like, I treated it very, very well yesterday to kind of get a bench line for how it should feel. Oh, good, Kronika. I'm glad. Yeah, it's, that was one of the challenges when I was making Master Series, is at the time, there was really no pure white that you could thin to that point without it separating all over the place. So when I created Master Series, I was specifically looking for a base and a pigment that would allow me to create a white that was really strong out the gate, but that you could thin to the point where you could layer it up, where it would blend. And glaze smoothly. And so pure white is the result of that effort there. So I glazed a little bit. You see how I took that up a little bit. Glazing with gray, though, is also going to take down my light. Remember how I said you don't want your light on this dark side to be as light as your light on this side. So now if you look at it, you can really see that the light is shining on this side, can't you? And then this side is darker. And I need a little bit more drama here. I think because it's not reading quite right. So you got to look at the sides together, but you got to look at the sides alone and ask yourself, okay, so one thing I need to do is I need to bring that edge up. I've lost my bright edge, and that's definitely influencing this. So remember, you want each of the edges of your blade to be pure white. I think I am going to grab my pure white and mix a new puddle. You haven't had pure white in your cart? What kind of Reaper paint supporter are you, Jabberwock? It's the best color we make. And I'm going to thin it. I'm going to make it about 2 to 1 paint to water, so pretty thick for pure white. Over accidentally put an extra drop in it. We're just moving around. Okay. Boop. I'm just going to adjust my camera every time I switch positions so if I wobble a bit, I'm just being wobbly. Okay, we've got our pure white. Mix that up. So this is a stronger pure white because I want to be able to put a fine line down the edges of this blade. And I don't want to have to go over it 50 times. But yeah, I want to get back to doing, being able to do really long sessions of streaming. But I see how fine that was. Like, see how that was. All I did was put paint on my, and you want it, like, really, you don't want a lot on there. You want enough so that the paint will come off the brush, but you don't want so much that when you touch it, you leave a puddle on the edge. So that let me put a super fine line right up the edge of this just by using the side of my brush. So I didn't even have to really do anything. I just had to run the side of my brush. Now the problem is that sometimes the sculpted edges are not as sharp, like when it's a flatter edge. So you have to be a little careful here to make sure the sculpt works with you. But in general, this is the way you get those edges. You don't just paint down them. So that's pretty good. And then this one I just want to reinforce now that I've got my paint at a right level. So that helps, but I need to get a little bit more variation. This is still just really dark and kind of blobulous. Well, I mean, it's okay, so yes, you shouldn't just choose the easiest way for stuff, but there is such a thing as like, this is like, okay, so this is like the people, this reminds me, Jabberwock, of a friend of mine who persisted in using craft paint for years, who understood that you know, that it was making things harder for him, but he felt like it was giving up to not try to make it as good as he could with the craft paint. And eventually he finally switched to miniatures paints and he was like, oh my god. And the problem with that is, remember, it's not necessarily helping you. Because you're trying a bunch of stuff with something that acts differently. So then it's going to take you longer to adapt to the new thing when you could have been making progress with the new thing all along. So I respect it, but you know, I hope that you adapt quickly to the pure white, and I hope that you like it. Because it's cool to, like, you know, to use stuff, other stuff, especially if you already bought it. I know it's an investment. You want to make it work. And maybe it works, it just takes more effort. But when it comes to whites that are thinnable, like Master Series Pure White is the beast. It is the thing. Let's see here. Where do I want to do? So that's a little bit better. I brought in a little bit more light. I could bring in a little bit more dark if I wanted, because I've lost a little bit of my darks. I was glazing and glazing, and this is where, again, you don't want to line things up perfectly. You want to kind of make them a little bit off center. So like I've got kind of a diagonal shadow going here. And that's cool. That's all good. I got a little wobbly on my line here. See how the edge of the blade, and this just is a thing, like especially with plastic. It's gonna sometimes warp, or it's gonna, you know, when they cast it and stuff like that. So you just gotta adapt to it. Maybe redraw your line a little bit, try to straighten it out with some paint so that I don't have quite that wobble. Down on that side, that's a little straighter. So that's looking better. You said, never said it was a wise choice. Well, that's why, you know, I hope that you like the pure white. I hope that it works for you. But mostly what I wanted to do is point this out as kind of an object lesson for other people. Like, do keep in mind that although, yeah, it's all experience, like everything you do is experience, whether you're using, if you're not using your Kolinsky sables or you are, whether you're, you know, using your Master Series white or you're not, but everything acts a little differently. So if you want to get good, if your eventual aim is to get good with Master Series, then just get Master Series and do that. If your eventual aim is to buy a Kolinsky sable and learn how to use it, then just buy the Kolinsky sable and buy it now. Why not? As long as you've you know, committed to the hobby enough that you're pretty sure you're not going to just, you know, not use it. But yeah, it's all good. I mean, everybody does things at their own pace for their own reasons. There's nothing wrong about any of it. It's just, you know, how hard it makes it for you down the road, or how easy or how fast you've progressed or could progress. And that may not be important to you at all. So, I mean, if you've enjoyed Jabberwock, if you've enjoyed the journey so far, that's the win. There is no other win. So many paints, yes. Yeah, and it's not just even brush control, right? But the amount of paint on the brush, Twisted Oma. Gotta get the amount of paint right. All right, so let's grab my thinner white, and I'm gonna bring this up just a little bit close to the edge. Because remember, I've got a pure white edge here. So what I can do is kind of see that blend that I just put in. I can kind of bring in my light toward that edge. And make it just a little lighter there. To make it look more cool. Hello, Gorilla Red. And hello, Jacqueline. We are working on some NMM, non-metallic metal. Painting something that is supposed to be metal to look like metal without using metallic paint. And I decided to do this mostly because I wanted this blue sky highlight to match her eyes and her dagger here. So that's why we decided to do NMM on these blades. And that's also a stronger blue than I've used on any of my other projects. So again, I'm looking at the back of this blade and thinking I could interrupt that dark a little bit. I'm going to grab some of my gray and use this side of my brush kind of, because this is kind of the back of the sword, so it doesn't need a lot of work. And just tried to throw a little bit of light in there. I can kind of look at the back. That's kind of an edge that you're not seeing. Like if I try it, like the character blocks it entirely. You can see the edge of it there. So really just try to make sure that it's not just a black pit. Try to put a little bit of light on it here or there. Because that side of the blade is definitely going to be reflecting stuff on her. But she's mostly dark colored. Except for her fur. So I may suggest a little bit of light right there from the fur. But it's also a side that nobody's going to be able to see except from a certain specific angle. So you got to remember that too. Don't put a lot of work into something that nobody's going to see. That is the opposite of the Apple philosophy, I know. And there are times when I embrace the Apple philosophy, but even in painting I do. But at other times I'm just like, well, I can't really even see that area. There's not light falling on it, so I'm just going to go elsewhere. Alrighty, so what do I want to do back here? We're kind of also still working with this side of the blade. We need to grab our white. Make sure we've got our edges. Sometimes you'll highlight and the one side of the blade, the edge will be strong and the other side it won't be. Here we kind of had more of strength of white on the other side of the blade. And here we've got kind of an odd kind of curvature here. Where the back side of this blade is a little bit distorted. And that could be because of my cleaning of it. It could be the cast. Either way, that's kind of the back edge. So I'm going to probably paint it dark. Again, it's going to be kind of facing the back side of the model, which is probably in like shadow if she's in an alley. So I'm just going to block that in and straighten up that line. Yeah, it's 10:30. It's time to stretch again. 1 second. I'm stretching a little more frequently. Most of the time you should stretch, you know, if you've been sitting in one position, you should stretch every hour, they say. But I'm stretching every 30 minutes because my back is upset with me. So, since I've been having some back stuff, so let's go and let you guys look at the pretty kitty NMM while I do stretches. I will prop it up with my knife butt. Here we go. Can I prop it up with my knife butt? I can. So there you go. You can see it. Some simple stretches. Oh, and remember to hydrate. Take a drink, everybody. Take a drink. Hey, Joe. Yeah, Joe, I mean, I recommend you just, like, start kind of picking up little bits and pieces. Like, because, I mean, a lot of people will advise you to buy sets, but in reality, I don't think that's necessarily, like, the best thing to do. What I think is, you know, save up $10, buy black, white, and maybe a couple other colors you like, and just start building your collection from there. When you're on a limited budget, you can get to easily having like 20 or 25 very useful colors. Yes, the 7th inning stretch. Yes, exactly. This is our one hour stretch.
Painting on a limited budget is a great way to learn to mix paints.
Yes, that was my boyfriend talking, who is also a I would say, world-renowned miniature painter. Um, but yes, David has a point, is that if you are on a limited budget, it's a great way to learn mixing, in which case, choose like a medium red, a medium blue, medium yellow, black and white, some nice browns, some metallics, maybe a skin tone.
That's part of how I got used to mixing paints. Was when I first painted, I was like a poor high school student and only had a small number of paints to work with.
Yes, and now he's a pro. Well, okay, I don't know. You have gotten paid for painting, right?
Yeah, I mean, on rare occasion.
Okay, that still makes you a pro. Once you take money for it, you're a professional. That's supposedly what that's what the Olympics committee would have us believe. So, although then they opened up the Olympics to professionals, so it didn't matter. Everybody says good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, exactly, Gorilla. But yeah, I mean, David's got a great point. Is like, when he was a poor high school student and he could only afford a few paints, but he just learned to mix with them. So, probably what I would do, what I always tell people to do in this case, Joe, is to buy if you have like $40, I think it's around $40, you could buy the Reaper starter set, the Reaper MSP starter set. It's got 11 paints in it, 10 or 11. And it's got pure black, pure white, a skin tone. It's got a basic set of colors that's not bad for starting. And it'll let you try the paint, and then you can mix it with your craft paint, because our paint will mix fine with your craft paint. Don't worry about that. But it'll let you start getting some different colors and some new paints. It is my fault. David does not have a day off. David is actually working, I think, right?
Yes.
Yes, he is working today. He is in here because he is not in a meeting currently. Yeah, you can buy paints individually. That's why I always say just buy the black and the white to start with. And then maybe like something like one of the reds, like Heraldic Red, 9402. Your yellow is probably Candlelight Yellow, 9408. You have a nice selection. You have a lot of blues that you could choose from, depending on if you like lighter or darker blues. I think you get more mileage out of a blue like the one I'm using, which is Cyan, 9117. Which is a little bit warm. It is a little bit greenish, but it's not like super, super green. But it's still very, very mixable with other stuff, even with reds. So, its yellow shift is very, very slight. So, if you just get some good primaries, like the numbers I just mentioned, you're pretty good, actually, for starting. You don't have to buy a lot. You could mix a lot of great colors from that, especially if you already have a bunch of, paints from other companies and craft paints, like I said. Now, what you will notice if you try to mix MSP with your craft paint, you'll probably notice that the MSP color will overwhelm the craft paint. Like, you'll have to use more craft paint to get it to kind of, mix well with the MSP. And that's just because MSP uses a lot more pigment. Because pigment is expensive, and craft paint stays cheaper by using, one, cheaper pigments, and also less pigment. So, like, if you were mixing you wanted a dark pink, and so you took your craft paint red and you put pure white in it from MSP, you would get a really pale pink, probably, and you'd be like, oh man, and you'd have to load a lot more red in. And I haven't played with the latest craft paints, so, I mean, they may be mixing it up. A lot of pigments are getting less expensive, and, they're probably using fairly high coverage bases, which are actually less expensive than low coverage bases in a weird kind of thing. I'm going to put some shadow up there. Oh, for the virtual expo. Nice. Yeah, Jetta, he's working. He's just being the peanut gallery because we're talking about, a subject near and dear to his heart. He is very much in favor of, learning to mix, and the great time to do that is when you're on a limited budget and you just can't afford to buy a lot of paint. I mean, it is, don't get me wrong, it's really convenient to have paints pre-mixed for you so you can just drop them into mixes. But, so I'm putting some blocks on that kind of mimic the areas that I've done on this side. So if I'm trying to suggest that she's like in, like the mouth of an alley or across in an alley looking out on a square, say, watching somebody approach her, then probably these two blades are going to be facing roughly the same, town square or whatever. And so I can make their areas of light and shadow similar. I probably don't want to make them exactly the same. You don't want to go for symmetrical necessarily. So I can mix that up a little bit. But we're just trying to suggest. Like, we're not doing Sky Earth. We're not trying to mirror the approach of anyone. You can thin it way, way, way down, Crows and Bones, but if you want it to go transparent, you've got a hard fight ahead of you. That's why I'm using liners today. I'm using brown liner. I also in the past have used gray liner for my NMM steel for the dark shadows. And the reason is that these guys don't have as high coverage out the gate, but they're so easy to thin to the point where they make a really smooth blend or a nice glaze. So that's why I'm using these instead of pure black for my NMM. They're near enough to black when you use them straight up that you're going to get the effect you want. Yes, Khajiit as paint. I have a Khajiit bust. Or it's not labeled as such, but it's obviously a Khajiit bust. I have to get much better at tiny freehand on twisted cloth because he's got a turban and stuff. I need to get better at tiny freehand and understand how cloth twists and patterns follow it before I can really do him. That I need to decide on a color scheme. I know what color I want his fur to be. I want to paint him kind of like a lynx. But I haven't decided on the cloth, and there's a lot of cloth. He's got a bone handle dagger. He's really cool. I love Khajiits. Yeah, the liners really are very versatile. In many ways, I feel they are very underrated. Like, because when you give something a name, and this is something you've got to do in the gaming community and painting community, like, there are people who won't care what the name is, and they'll just be looking for a color. But those people are not as numerous as the people who are actually looking for why would I want this color? So if you tell them that it's grass green, they're going to use it for grass. If you tell them it's muddy brown, they're going to use it for mud. And when they say liner, they're going to use it for lining. But yeah, the liners are a lot more versatile than that would suggest. But that's true of almost all paint. I mean, when you come down to it, you can come up with new ways to use an awful lot of things. Well, it's like taking our sealer and using it as a wash medium. You know, like that's just something that happened. That it's a good matte medium and wash medium. Little did I know when I made it, but it turned out to that. So the sealer, even our sealer, is like useful for more than one thing. I use it a lot if I'm trying to get more transparency. If I really do need like a wash, or I need to get transparency without losing body, then that's how I do it. So I want to do another one here. We'll put another line in here. We'll do that and do that. I'm trying to break this up just a little bit more. I don't want to have it be too symmetrical. I might bring my blue down more. Maybe that would help. Goblin green. The old GW one? Gorilla? Is that the one you're talking about? Because we did I have a duplicate for that. Like, Reaper does make a color that is very close to that on purpose, because I liked that color too. If you're talking about the old Games Workshop one. Yep. Okay, so Meadow Green. Meadow Green in Reaper Bones is now given throughout games, and I worked for GW, so I know this. Throughout its lifespan, you know, Goblin Green shifted a little bit, depending on what line it was in. But at least the hex bottle, not the old coat d'arms, but the clear hex bottles, the really, really kind of like squat ones, that's the Goblin Green that I used as a pattern. Because I really liked it. And, you know, it was great for painting around the edge of your base if you were doing fantasy wargame models and you were doing like a grassy field kind of effect. Bobby Jackson loves it. It got canceled and Bobby Jackson badgered us until we reproduced it. And Bobby's one of our sculptors, so you can thank him at ReaperCon if you come. But yeah, Meadow Green. And I have it, I think, around here somewhere. But if somebody has the number, if you love Goblin Green, get Meadow Green. It's, like I said, it's really, really, really close, guys. I may have been strongly influenced by several old Games Workshop colors that I liked when I created Master Series paint. Yeah, coat d'arms still do. Although their Goblin Green is going to be a little bit different, just like their Space Wolf Gray or Shadow Gray is going to be slightly different. Like the Coat d'Arms Shadow Gray is a little bit more purple, as I recall. But, you know, so there's going to be slight variations from the Coat d'Arms to, okay. So the Goblin Green I'm talking about was part of this series. The Clear Hex, the squat ones. So that's the Goblin Green version that I used as inspiration for Meadow Green. But there's an example of the naming convention, right there. Like, if you didn't know that, you might think that Meadow Green is just for turf colors. You might never look at it for goblins. But that's what it's based on. I just didn't want to call it that. Mostly because Ron doesn't think goblins should be green. Yeah, Mithril Silver is the one color. I have like 4 bottles of that. And I add water to them religiously so they don't dry out, because that actually is the one Games Workshop color that I wish had never gone out of print. Yeah, well, Ron is a first edition D&D player. He thinks goblins should be orange max styles. It's why our goblin skin in the Dungeon Dwellers line is orange. But don't worry, goblin skin in the Dungeon Dwellers line still makes a great red hair color. Even if Ron is wrong about the color of goblins. I do agree with you. I have gone over to green and goblins, so. I'm just trying to blend some stuff in. I think I've got a little speck of something in my paint there. Let's see here. If I see a little speck, I just take my knife and I just very lightly brush it over the surface. Very lightly. You just want to kind of touch and take off the thing that's annoying you. You don't want to scrape up your paint. But when you've got a little pebble or grit piece in your paint and you don't like it, you can use your knife without managing to take up everything. Because the grit is going to stand up above the surface of your paint, so you usually can kind of wick it off without having too much trouble. It's first edition D&D. It's basic D&D. Goblins were orange gorilla. I know. Believe me. Ron has taken a lot of crap over the years for his beliefs in orange goblins, so don't worry. We're on it, but he just won't shift. He's stuck in first edition. I think GW is slowly, or not GW, D&D has slowly started shifting, because don't they make them gray now or something? Like, what color are goblins these days, guys? Orcs are blue, goblins are orange, and hobgoblins are red. No, Crowley. Although I don't mind a reddish brown tone for hobgoblins. I think that's good. It's not just that. I mean, it's Pathfinder because greenskins were a thing, right? Like, it started with Games Workshop. Even Peter Jackson made his goblins slightly green in Lord of the Rings, if you really look at them. It's everybody dances around. Whatever the case, people think of goblins as green. And the Green Goblin superhero, that too. So, like, Green and Goblin are stuck together in people's heads. Oh, the 5e has them as a ruddy tan color? Well, okay. That works. Right. Well, and you can go, as with all other things, the GM's word rules, and if you want purple goblins, make some. By all means, exercise your creativity in goblin-y ways. Now I'm just trying to make these guys blend in a little bit better here. So you see, I block in my lights and darks, then I bring in some colors, I start blending, I start bringing it, yeah, see? So I'm trying to make my darker shadow down further than it is here. But it probably means I need my blue a little bit further down the blade. Or this will at least be a wider shadow. You don't want it too dark because, again, light side of the blade, you don't want it to be as dark as the dark side of the blade. Okay, 1046. We're doing pretty well. I'm going to just make a sharp there. Green with black tats. That's cool. Oh, yeah. So they're just trying to please everybody, Agent Marvel. That way you could have a goblin tribe be any color. D&D, trying to play the crowd, trying to please everybody. All right, I'm going to try to fuzz in this edge a little bit. Just a little. Need to bring in more white. I haven't painted a goblin in a long time. David has a goblin bust. He did paint it green. But I think that was one of its, like, somebody else had painted the same thing green as well. I don't know, I like green goblins. I don't think that orange ones bother me, but... So, blending it in. What I'm doing is glazing over the top. Blending, reinforcing my dark and light bands. So you have cultured goblins. That's cool, Gorilla. That's the most fun part of D&D, in my opinion, is world building, making your world a little bit different from everybody else's. I haven't really addressed goblins in my personal game world. I addressed orcs. I made my orcs extremely high-cultured orcs. Very sophisticated. Well, I mean, just because you have culture doesn't mean you're necessarily good aligned. Although alignment is also a kind of a thing where I'm like, I used to love alignment when I was younger, and now I'm older. I'm like, shades of gray, darn it! When your real world philosophy starts intruding on your D&D game. Alright. Blended. That's looking better. Liking that. A little bit different from that one. That's what I wanted. I wanted it to be a bit different. A little bit different. And I'm doing a lot of kind of spot mixes. So I'm grabbing like a little bit of brown liner, picking up a little bit of white, mixing them together, and then painting them on. I don't know. I mean, the GW convention is that orcs are darker and goblins are lighter. But I don't know. I'm okay. I like making my orcs to be actually really dark-skinned. I kind of like how Peter Jackson did the Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings. But I like to put a little bit more color in mine. Like, I kind of like to do mine with really dark brown skin, but with hints of olive green and blue and things like that. That's how orcs are in my thing. But, you know, that's totally departing from D&D or everything else. But I've always considered the D&D world stuff to be kind of optional, and I can do whatever I want if I'm running the game. It's the world because it's the world. I don't think there's any right or wrong here. Alrighty. That's getting there, guys. That's getting there. We're getting there. Yeah, we are. So I'm going to put just a little bit of highlight on this back edge. I got a little bit watery, so I'm going to have to go back over it. Grab some more white. Boom, boom, boom. Back edge. And this is where sometimes you can get into trouble, as I said, with the sculpt, or when I was cleaning this blade with my knife, I may have made this edge a little bit ragged, not realizing it at the time. So you just work with it. Do what you can. Since it's the back edge and it intersects the tail, it's really easy to kind of just generalize with it. Yeah, it's fantasy. It's all made up. I mean, orcs and goblins and trolls and all that are, you know, coming from folklore, and I don't think, in all the Norwegian folklore I've read, I don't think they ever talk about what color trolls' skins are. So it's up to you. Most people seem to paint trolls greenish. In the world of my novel that I'm writing, they're all like, they tend to be brown, golden, reddish, but they can also be like orangish or greenish. So, you know, they're fantasy. Do what you like. And if anybody complains, tell them it's your world. This is how it is in my world. That should be the first phrase any GM learns. Alright, then I'm gonna just kind of blend that in a little bit, that edge. See that fine edge? Just kind of generalizing because, like I said, it's a little bit ragged, and the sculpt or how I cleaned it is probably the problem, and how it's molded with the tail right there. So I'm just trying to get a little bit of suggestion of light on the edge, and I'm going to be okay with that. You don't fight. If there's a section of the model that just is molded a little bit wonky, or you know, it's you know, you accidentally nicked it when you were cleaning it, you know, because I was really fast and rough when I did this mini. Don't fight with it. Just, you know, make it good enough and move on. Yeah, it's my world and you are just living in it. I do want to maybe blend this edge a little bit more. There. That's looking pretty good. I'm okay with that. Then all we have to do is the back, and Kitty has shiny blades. Shiny kitty blades. Kitty of shiny blades. Excellent. And then we've got the same problem here with this edge being pointed toward the cat and toward the shadow also. So there's not a whole lot we could do to hit that darker edge. It's turned away from the light very much so. So the best we can do is probably kind of block in some lights and darks on it. And just run with it. Where it comes up against the tail, you can make it lighter. You could even put some of the kitty tail colors in it if you can reach, but this is so far sunk back that I don't feel I can. But yeah, I mean, the final answer on Monster Colors is there is no right answer. Unless you are painting for a company, then there's a right answer. Like, if you are painting for a company, and in their world, their trolls are red, you're gonna paint a red troll. Because then, at that point, it's commercial art. Then you don't have a choice. But if you are just painting it for yourself, or for your D&D world that you created, your very own self, you can do whatever you want. That isn't to say that you should run out and just change everything just to change it. You should always have a reason, but it could be a reason as simple as I like blue trolls. So just putting in some light on the back of this, then I'm going to mess it up. I am going to stand up, I think, and stretch. Just kind of making a couple of shadow areas here. Couple of shadow areas over here. Shadow under the tail there. Want that shadow there because the light is being blocked by the tail, so we're gonna definitely get a big shadow there. We won't have that big of a shadow necessarily on the other side. So take your cue also from where things are positioned. I'm gonna stand up and stretch just for a second, guys, and then we'll do another 10 minutes. We'll finish out the back of those swords. Swords. Kitty sword. There we go. I have to kind of look at her and see if that blue is carrying. I think it is. I definitely want that dagger handle to kind of pick up the blue there. I may have to make it just a little stronger. I'm just looking at it as I'm standing back here. Shiny pokey thingies, yep. And now they're really shiny, aren't they? Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, a lot of people seem to be really liking the armor. We just started, I love to shade green with purple, so we started with Ancient Oak and took it up with some brighter greens, and Then we use some Kraken ink, which is a lovely color. Do I have it out? No, I don't have it out right now. But it's a lovely color that Sadie created for the Brine Wind sets. And Kraken ink is like this beautiful dark purple, but it's really vibrant. Unlike things like Nightshade purple, which is more black. It's like a purple black. But Kraken ink is definitely purple. It's intense. So it makes a very interesting kind of magical, almost a fae kind of look to that armor. It almost looks like chitin, right? So, in fact, if I had highlighted the purple to bring it up, like on the undersides to reflect under reflections, it would look iridescent. So, no, this is how you do fake iridescence, guys. If you're looking to like paint a scarab or a big bug and you want to kind of get that, kind of study some iridescent stuff in real life to kind of get an idea where it shifts. But in general, I could make this look very, very iridescent if I had taken a lighter purple and brought it up underneath where those purple shadows are. Yeah, I think a cat would keep her blades in pretty good repair too, Cornico. Absolutely. All right, stretched out the back. Stretch. Alrighty. One last little bit. So yeah, get used to me stretching a lot in the coming days and weeks, my dears. Let's see. Yeah, no, actually, in person, that blue is strong enough. Like, it's washing out a little bit on the screen, but the blue definitely is strong enough, I think, to carry. So we're good. But yeah, her armor is nice. I'm going to get the leather still, the brown leather and the reddish leather still needs to be brought up. So let's try and just block in some lights here on the backside of the sword so that we're more or less done with it. So I want my light blending down from that. I want to blend it here. Maybe I leave that one a middle gray. Don't have to go all the way down to really dark either on some of these shadow areas. You can just leave them a middle gray and bring in a lot of white around them. Thank you. Yep, she's got her tabby markings. Thank you, Crazy Ferret. Yeah, start looking around for one Reaper. We started more or less on time, so just want to get in my full time. Blend this down here. There. Oh, Brush for Hire's on. I don't think we've ever rated Brush for Hire, have we? On this show, anyway. I don't know if we've rated him on other shows. We usually raid the girls, like usually, or Luca. Just playing around with some white, blending it in, blending it out, figuring out where I want it. We can make anybody an honorary girl. I don't know. They may not want to be an honorary girl. Some guys don't. It's just that for whatever reason, we do tend to raid, like Mocha, or, we tend to raid a lot of the women of mini painting, or Sky Daddy, or who's a body painter that we like. It's just the way we tend to do. Could be just who's on normally when I'm on. But I like to raid new people, so. I like it when we mix it up. But yeah, whenever you want to, Justin, I'm cool with hitting the button. So who are we going to raid? Make a decision. Miniatures done. We're going to go see Luca. We're going to throw the love back to Luca. And it's Monday, so later we should have Josh on. So if you want help with your faster painting techniques, Josh is fantastic at that. All right, I'm gonna wish you guys a good day. We got good work done on shiny swords today with the skylight and the shadows reflecting, and how we alternate our lengths of light and shadow to make it look more real. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And yay, we made it through a show. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye bye.